It stands to reason, therefore, that the greatest possible being would express the greatest possible ethic, and that ethic is love. And the greatest possible being would express the greatest possible ethic in the greatest possible way. The greatest possible way to express love is self-sacrifice. There is no other worldview that tells us of this most excellent way to express love like the Christian worldview. My dear friend Joe Mastro is a veteran of the Vietnam War. He recently shared with me a story that I won't be able to forget. One of Joe's tasks during the war was to process incoming soldiers. With a hitch in his voice, Joe told me about one such young man named Kennard. I'll never forget his name, Joe told me. As he was being processed, Kennard asked Joe, "What is the casualty rate in this zone?" Trying to comfort Kennard without being unrealistic, Joe told him that the casualty rate wasn't too bad. But he was scared, Abdu, Joe told me. Yes, Kennard was scared. But he was brave. Courage, after all, isn't the absence of fear. It is action in the face of fear. But Kennard's story isn't a happy one. Not 2 months later, I had to pull Kennard's file, Joe told me. He took a bullet to the chest and died. It was at this point that Joe choked up. I can still remember his face. To me, Kennard's face is the face of Memorial Day. As Joe finished, I couldn't help but think of the many other veterans for whom Memorial Day has a face, not just a date. Memorial Day ought not to be an abstract idea. It isn't merely a reason to take a day off from work or school to supposedly observe a fleeting remembrance of those who gave their lives for this country. Consider the soldier who saw the faces of the men and women who died in battle with foreign grit in their teeth. Perhaps he or she heard voices utter their last words. Perhaps he or she still feels the angst of seeing those faces and hearing those voices. For so many such people, and so many who didn't serve, but whose loved ones did serve and never came home, Memorial Day isn't just a concept or an abstraction. It's visceral. It's real. That makes the reason for this memorial, their sacrifices, more than an abstract concept. Sacrifice is visceral. Sacrifice is real. My mind can't help but draw a striking contrast with the reality of the kind of sacrifice we remember and some ideas espoused by the best-selling author Yuval Noah Harari. In his best-selling book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, Harari explains that all cultures across human history have embraced useful myths to perpetuate their existences. Among the myths Harari lists are corporations, gods, democracy, money, economics, nations, and even freedom and equality. Harari isn't advocating that we abandon these myths. He simply argues that they have no real objective existence. Rather, humanity has invented them to function. It's important to be fair to Harari. He's not poking fun or making light of these myths. He thinks they're terribly important social phenomena. They are, however, no more and no less than that. They are useful and powerful fictions. They are so powerful, in fact, that people have been willing to sacrifice their lives to perpetuate the ideals the myths uphold. It's true that some things are useful fictions. As a lawyer, I could affirm that things like corporations, which exist in the eyes of the law as separate legal persons, don't exist in the same concrete sense as human persons. The concept of a corporation serves a legal system that allows people to function, well, corporately, for a common economic goal. But I take exception with the idea that freedom and equality are conceptual myths. Understandably, a secular atheist like Harari would claim that they are subjective concepts that help society function and nothing more. If humanity is all there is, if there is no ultimate authority like God, then such things are mere fictions. Most of us recognize, however, that there is something far more substantial and objective to liberty and equality than subjectively useful but ultimately false ideas. The objectivity of human value, liberty, and equality can only come from God, who is the grounding and source of all being. He is the necessary being and the one from whom all other things come into existence. And so when he declares that we are all created in God's image and therefore equal and equally deserving of freedom, it isn't a matter of opinion. Human value and equality are baked into existence. Self-sacrifice for the sake of human value and equality is similarly baked into creation. The Bible declares that Jesus, the Lamb of God, was slain before the foundation of the world. In other words, human value and freedom was in the mind of God before we existed. His knowledge that we would use that freedom to fall was prior to the creation. And the cross's sacrifice to pay for our redemption was the divine rescue plan all along. I've always admired the idea of self-sacrifice and have aspired to it. That is one reason why I find the gospel to be so attractive. It stands to reason, therefore, that the greatest possible being would express the greatest possible ethic, and that ethic is love. And the greatest possible being would express the greatest possible ethic in the greatest possible way. The greatest possible way to express love is self-sacrifice. There is no other worldview that tells us of this most excellent way to express love like the Christian worldview. The words of Romans chapter 5 echo every day in my mind. For God showed his love for us, in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. What has all this got to do with Memorial Day? It is this. Memorial Day is about what is concrete, what is real, not what is a useful myth. Both the human dignity and the sacrifices so many have made to secure it are both real. In a well-known Memorial Day speech, President Ronald Reagan pointed out the youth of those who died on the battlefields. Most of them were boys when they died, and they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. Those sacrifices are not abstractions, nor were they made for useful myths. No, their twofold sacrifices were for human dignity and liberty, both of which are quite real because God embedded them into the reality he created. After all, he gave his one and only Son so that all of us could be saved. And he did it because of love, not an abstract love, not a conceptual love. He did it because of a concrete love for each one of us. It may seem sappy, maybe even superficial, to inject love as a Memorial Day sentiment. To do so runs the risk of turning a day of austere reflection into a Hallmark holiday like Sweetest Day. But such love is the heart of the sacrifices made by so many so that so many more could live in a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Such a love compels the hearts of men and women to give their every effort in service to those they will never meet. I think of Martin Treptow, who fought in World War I. He was killed on the Western Front but had a diary with a note that read, "I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone." I don't pretend to know Treptow's religious beliefs, but his motivation to act as if the struggle depended only on him reflects the reality that our salvation depends only on Christ. Let us remember those who have fallen in the same intensity and reality as Joe Mastro, for whom Memorial Day has a face. Let us remember real men and women who offered themselves as real sacrifices for a real cause with real love of real people. Let us remember each individual person, even those whose faces we'll never see or names we'll never know. For some of us, the names are fresh. They're actually kin. They are sons, daughters, husbands, wives, fathers, and mothers who died. They may have done so in wars of recent memory or even just in the past 6 months. Time has no hold on the reality and depth of their sacrifices. May time have no hold on how strongly their faces burn in our memories. God bless you.